India and the US announced a trade deal with a reduction of some of President Donald Trump's harshest tariffs anywhere. He says India will stop buying Russian oil and open up to American business. So why is the deal getting such a mixed reaction in India? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Rishaad. Salamat. It was a post on social media from Donald Trump that told the world that a trade deal had been agreed with India. The father of all deals, as one politician in India called it, a week after Prime Minister Narendra Modi sealed the so-called mother of all deals with the European Union. Now, the devil's in the detail, as the saying goes, but critics say the India-US agreement is bedevilled by its vagueness. Trump says India will stop buying Russian oil, while India's huge agricultural market will open up to the US. And that's being doubted in India, with cheaper oil and agriculture hugely important to the country's economy. While markets in India reacted positively, the opposition and some analysts are questioning what's actually been agreed at all. So why has a deal been announced now, and why the mixed reaction? What's in it for Trump and Modi? We'll discuss this with our guests shortly, but first this report from Alexandra Byers.
U.S. President Donald Trump posted online on Monday, announcing what he called a new trade deal with India, with the U.S. cutting tariffs on Indian goods from 50% to 18%, in exchange for India agreeing to stop purchasing Russian oil and reducing its trade barriers to zero. Members of the Indian Prime Minister's party congratulated him on the announcement, but there's little information on the details of the agreement. Modi posted his own statement, welcoming the reduced tariffs, but making no mention of a deal, no mention of Russian oil, and no mention of Trump's claim that India's agreed to buy $500 billion worth of goods from the U.S.
We have Mr. Trump's tweet and we have Mr. Modi's tweet. Is that enough in a parliamentary democracy? Shouldn't the government come and explain to the people of India what's in the deal? We have no idea. Mr. Trump says agriculture. So what are the protections for India's farmers? Mr. Trump says 500 billion. Our entire import bill is 700 billion. So are we going to stop buying from every other country and only buy from America?
The Indian government says it will announce the details when it has them.
As soon as the final understanding of the deal is inked and the joint statement is finalized, technical processes are completed, full details will be shared.
The lack of clarity didn't hold back the Indian stock markets, which surged after Trump's announcement. The relationship between the two has been strained since Trump returned to the White House. 25% U.S. tariffs initially imposed were increased to 50% in August as punishment for India buying Russian oil. Indian industries were hit hard by the move, with exports plummeting. The U.S. was India's top trading partner in 2024, with their total bilateral trade worth nearly $130 billion. But the relationship is skewed in India's favor. The U.S. exported around $41 billion to India. In comparison, Indian exports to the U.S. totaled $87 billion in 2024, a trade deficit of more than $45 billion.
When they imposed a 50% tariff, customer demand had dropped and business slowed down. Now that it's been reduced to 18%, I think work will pick up again. Everything is interconnected. There will be growth across the board. When people have more money in their pockets, work will automatically increase for us as well.
But there's concern about India possibly opening up its highly guarded agricultural market to the U.S. Nearly half of its population relies on agriculture to earn a living, and farmers were behind one of the fiercest protests Modi has faced during his time in office. And there are questions about why the announcement now. India just signed what it called the mother of all trade deals with the European Union last week, hot on the heels of another major agreement with the UK. But what's in the agreement with the US leaves more questions than answers. Alexandra Byers, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests. In Washington, D.C., Ajay, Chhibber, distinguished visiting scholar at the Institute for International Economic Policy at George Washington University. In New Delhi, Biswajit Dhar, a trade economist and former professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University. And also in Washington, Harry Broadman, former Chief of Staff at the President's Council of Economic Advisers, which is a US government agency. A warm welcome to all three of you. Now, it seems very vague here. The Trade Minister's not been able, as we just heard, to give us the details. Narendra Modi, in his social media post, didn't even mention the word deal. So the same question to all three of you, starting with you, Ajay. Is this actually a deal?
Yeah, I think there's clearly a deal. But, with Trump, even if you have a deal, do you really have a deal? As Korea is finding out, as Canada is finding out, things can change. But in this case, I think clearly there is a deal. I think 99% of the actual negotiation, probably even more, was already there. It was sitting in Trump's side desk. So whenever he decides that wants to go ahead and make the deal is made. And it looks like he wants to go ahead and make the deal for a variety of reasons we can discuss. But I think there is a deal, and they're waiting for the joint statement, I think, because that's pretty important, because that way both sides are singing off the same page. So I think that's where we are, but there is clearly a deal, but we'll know that the devil will be in the details, and we'll know that soon enough.
Biswajit.
Yeah, of course, there is a deal. And when President Trump has announced it on his, and on Truth Social, then we have every reason to believe that there has been a deal. And also, the details that he has put in there has been corroborated by his Secretary of Agriculture, Ms. Rawlins, that India has actually opened up its market. Now, I'm not too sure whether as Ajay says, that the whole deal was done and it was lying in Trump's, sort of table somewhere, and he just brought it up. Because I think the Indian government was fairly opposed to opening up agriculture. And until recently, the government had said that we are negotiating, and there has been no deal from our side because there are contentious issues there. So it's really mysterious how suddenly this has popped up almost immediately after the deal with the European Union was announced.
We'll come to that. Harry, then.
Yeah, I hope there's a deal. We've seen this movie many times before in the United States and the rest of the world, watching Mr. Trump negotiate with different countries. To be frank, I'm quite skeptical, and I think Mr. Modi is quite cunning. I'm sure he's holding his breath as well. In the U.S., a trade deal is either an executive agreement or it requires an act of Congress, and it depends on what are the contours of that deal. And, we got to see. The proof is in the pudding.
Harry, but, why tell the world about a deal when actually something on the surface, a little beneath that surface, there's a complete lack of details, and it seems to be not even half-baked?
I would agree. It's maybe a quarter baked, if that. In the United States, a trade deal, has to be, enshrined in some kind of legal basis. Now, whether this will be an executive agreement by the president, and some presidents under certain deals have that authority, or it requires legislation on the part of the Congress. So that's number one. Number two, we've seen this movie many times before with many countries, including some of our closest trading partners, apart from India, where Mr. Trump will announce a deal and then he'll change his mind. In fact, this has happened to India before with Trump, just during this presidency. So again, I hope it's the case, but I remain skeptical.
Biswajit, 18% on Indian exports, none on US ones. Surely something like this is the political equivalent of Turkey voting for Christmas.
Absolutely, and that's where I think a lot of us here are extremely uncomfortable with this deal, because for one, India has always emphasized in the WTO and of course in other trade agreements a special and differential treatment for developing countries. That the developing countries will always have lesser tariffs, at least not more tariffs as compared to their developed country partners. Now, here is a deal where we aren't going to be charging anything on U.S. imports, and U.S. has 18% tariffs. The other thing I might point out that before this reciprocal tariff came, India's imports were facing an average tariff of about 2.4 to 2.5%. So, which then means that what is been agreed in this deal and what we have know from President Trump and has been welcomed by our Prime Minister and our Trade Minister is that the tariff on Indian imports are going up almost sevenfold. Now that's the way. That's the initial sort of point where a lot of people are really opposed to this deal.
Yeah, and Ajay, the same question here. I mean, it could be hugely damaging for the strongman image of Narendra Modi.
No, I don't think so at all. I look at it quite differently. I think tariffs actually hurt your own people. So India has had very high tariffs for quite a long time. I've always proposed that India should be reducing its tariffs considerably. So if this deal reduces our tariffs, it'll be good for India. As for the 18%, the way I look at it is, the old order has changed. We are in a jungle now. So if you're in a jungle and you hear a tiger, you can't outrun the tiger. You only have to outrun the guy next to you. So with 18% tariffs, it appears, of course, quite high. But if it's lower than all your competitors, then you have an advantage in this market. This is the world that we are living in. This is the world that we have to deal with. So I don't look at it in that perspective. I look at lowering India's tariffs as a good thing. Where they will finally settle, we will see. And on which products they will settle at what rate, we will see. But a reduction in Indian tariffs, that was part of the big EU deal as well. On a range of products, India has agreed to reduce tariffs, of course, in a phased manner. So I look at it quite differently. I look at this, that if it goes through, it's a win-win on both sides. We do need to increase trade with the United States. We should be reaching 500 billion by 2030. And if this deal goes through, then we are on that path. I look at it quite differently, and I look at it very positively if it were to happen. And since the EU deal was called the mother of all deals, this could be the father of all deals, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Indians love to talk about mother and father, and so that would be a good thing in my book.
On that very point, Harry, currently India buys, just over $41 billion worth of US goods a year. Now, how can Donald Trump expect them to lift that figure to $500 billion? I mean, especially if he's talking just goods trade here. And, is this a number just picked out of the air?
Well, we don't know, but I think obviously if India wants to do it, as Ajay said, I mean this is really important for India's growth. Most countries who have tariffs don't do very well. India, of course, has had a very protectionist policy. It's not a criticism; it's just the way of life of economic policy in India, and frankly in our country as well. If this proves to be a deal, it's going to be extraordinarily helpful for India. Also helpful for the U.S. But listen, I'm rooting for India to become more competitive internationally. And if there's a deal here that helps that, I think that's fabulous. But I remain skeptical because I see this moving before.
One of the other aspects of all this is, and this question is going to go really to Ajay. Would India really give up buying Russian oil given its long-standing traditional ties with Moscow?
See, I think the whole Russian oil story has to be looked at in some perspective. When, if nobody had bought the Russian oil that India bought, and of course India was a swing buyer, India was not buying much Russian oil in, say, 2020 or 2021. But then the world price of oil would have gone through the roof, and India would have been hurt. American consumers would have been hurt. Everybody would have been hurt. So the fact that India bought Russian oil for a while and processed it and put it out in the market was actually a good thing for the rest of the world. Now, oil is not a commodity that you cannot source from various places. So if in order to go ahead with this deal, India reduces quite substantially its Russian oil purchases and starts buying oil from somewhere else, but Russia finds other buyers and the global market remains settled, I think it should be fine. I don't know the details, but I mean, I think we'll know soon. But oil is a commodity that it's a globally traded commodity, and if you buy a little less from here, you'll have to buy some more from there, and those who were selling it to you earlier will have to unload it somewhere else. Maybe the Chinese will pick it up. So I don't see that. On the $500 billion, I was told that it's over 5 years. So what that means is that India would be buying roughly 100, and that might also get phased up over a period of time. So if you're buying already about 50 billion, ramping it up to 70, 80 billion next year, and then maybe by the fifth year, you're at 120 billion, and you add it all up to 500 billion is not a bad thing at all. There's lots of US products that are very competitive, and India should be buying from the US. So, that doesn't sound like a huge number to me.
Biswajit, let's move now to agriculture. And we know that the farming lobby is very crucial for Narendra Modi's politics here. Now, he's made a political pledge that the interests of the farmer will be upheld. From what you know about this so-called agreement, are they being upheld?
No, actually, see, I want to address one issue that was raised by both my friends earlier about the win-win situation that is going to happen if India removes all its tariffs. Now, let me point out to them the reality that India faces today. That we have done about 22 deals and several with major trade partners. The reality is that Indian agriculture and manufacturing sectors are completely uncompetitive. And that is our own problem. And that is the reason why India is so protectionist, because you have this large number of small enterprises, micro, small and medium enterprises, and also the large agricultural sector. And what has happened with every trade deal that we have done with major trade partners, our trade deficit has actually gone up. And if you look at the numbers, it looks pretty astonishing how trade deficit has gone up. Now, with many of these trade deals, earlier trade deals, the government has repeatedly said, we have got a bad deal from our trade partners, from ASEAN, Japan, Korea, etc. And we want to review all these trade agreements because we have not been able to export enough. The problem is that we can't export because we are uncompetitive. We do not meet the international standards, the food safety standards, other regulatory standards, and that is where I'm worried about even the European Union, which insists that labor standards must be met. Now, India has the labor laws that we have done, and recently we have a whole lot of labor codes. We don't call them labor laws, which is aimed at making the labor market more flexible. It means hiring and firing has become easier. The labor rights have been brought down, have been truncated, and those are issues that are going to be hurting India. So we are actually not really prepared to get into the international, there and compete and win from this situation. It's very unfortunate, but then that is a reality. Now, suddenly, if you start opening up all these sectors which are very vulnerable, and now I come to agriculture, and this is the reason that we have very large number of small farmers, and these in the WTO parlance we call them low-income and resource-poor farmers. And according to the government data, 99.49% of the holdings in India are cultivated by low-income and resource-poor farmers. So they have absolutely no legs to stand on. They need government support. Now, that is the reason why the government actually made a commitment not to open agriculture in any of the FTAs. And the Prime Minister had made a commitment last year on our Independence Day that the interests of the farmers will be protected under all circumstances. It won't be, it won't be a sacrifice. We won't open up. There lies the problem, that when Trump says that agricultural products will be exported to India, and as I said earlier, that the Secretary of Agriculture says we are going to be selling agricultural commodities, and the commodity prices in the US are going to rise as a result. That is where the discomfiture lies.
Biswajit, I want just to move things along to Harry and talk about now the timing of this. This is less than a week after the signing of the so-called mother of all deals, as you refer to, the EU-India free trade agreement. Now, Harry, can we read anything into the timing?
I think to some extent, who knows what was going on behind the scenes, but, yes, countries are negotiating with each other. And of course, Mr. Trump sees himself as the gorilla in the ring, and that if someone has done a deal that didn't include the U.S., this is time for the U.S. to step up. But I think, listen, the world economy is a competitive place precisely because of comparative advantage and differentials in trade powers among these different countries. I agree with what was just said about, what's going on in India in the agricultural market. I think the notion that India would open up for agricultural exports, listen, it would be great from a competitiveness perspective in India, but there's got to be a transition period because all of these smallholder farmers are going to be hurt. And so I think there the question is, what's the domestic policy in India, social safety net, as it were, that would be coupled on the domestic side in India with such a trade deal? If it in fact is true that U.S. exports in agriculture are going to make their way to India much more unencumbered than is currently the case.
To you, Ajay, now, the thing is this, if you look at the bare bones, the optics of this purported agreement, how does it compare to others in India's neighborhood?
So I think, like I said, we have a rate. I wish we had 15% like the EU, Japan, and Korea, but we have 18. But we are still better off than Bangladesh, which will compete with us in textiles. Better off than Vietnam. Better off than China. So I think overall, it's in relative tariff terms, it's a favorable deal. I think the EU deal, I think it was FOMO. It was, fear of missing out. I think right after the EU deal, Trump felt, and he must have been told by many people in industry as well, that, if we don't have a deal with India and they have a big deal with the mother of all deals with the EU, slowly their rules, regulations will drift towards what the European standards are, and we will miss out in the long run. So I think FOMO was a big factor, the fear of missing out in making this so sudden, and probably left his trade team also somewhat unprepared, which is why they're scrambling to finalize whatever there is. On agriculture, I don't think India is going to open up in a big way, and it cannot. There are 100 million people dependent just on the dairy sector, and they're not going to open that up that quickly. They will open up, they will buy some products like almonds, pistachio, nuts, berries, fruits, things like that. There'll be a limited deal on agriculture, which the US can tout back to its farmers as a big opening up. But on manufacturing and other products, especially, we are not competing with the United States on a lot of very capital-intensive machinery and things which we need.
Ajay?
And also they're not going to be selling textiles, gems, and jewelry and labor-intensive products to us. So this is a this could be a very complementary relationship, beneficial to both sides. And that's how I see it.
Interesting stuff, but we're running out of time. Biswajit, and to all of you, just follow off each other, less than 30 seconds each. What will the final agreement look like, very quickly?
Well, it's very unclear now because we have to see. Not even the fine print. We don't even have the bold print, and we don't know what the government of India has agreed to because they're not. So the lack of transparency is also something that we have to contend with. On both sides, Trump has only tweeted, and so we need more details. But whatever has come out from the tweets, the Trump's tweet and and Rawlins's tweet, I think India has to think a lot as to what the implications would be.
Very quickly, Harry.
No, absolutely. I mean, once you make these deals written down and you make them public, then there's very little room for rolling back and turning away, and that really is the acid test. And as I said before, we've seen this before with Trump, where deals are announced and then his mind has changed 24 or 10 hours later. And when we see the actual text of the agreement, as a former trade negotiator, that is what matters. These oral comments are fabulous, right? In spirit, but we've got to see the text. And then on both sides, they've got to be ratified in some formal way by both governments.
Ajay, you've got 10 seconds. Very quickly, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I think this Republic Day in India will go down in history as a trade deal bonanza. I mean, we had the mother of all deals and follows a week later with the father of all deals. This is very good start for 2026 for India. And I think India is showing that it is ready to trade with the world. It's not protectionist. It's going to open up. It's on its way to the Viksit Bharat, the advanced economy that it wants to be by 2047. And the only way to get there is to be able to trade with the West.
Thank you. You've been great. Thanks to all our guests there, Ajay Chhibber, Biswajit Dhar, and Harry Broadman. Thank you so much. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. I'm Rishaad Salamat, and from the entire team here, bye for now.